What's up YouTube, I'm Alberta26 and today's video is going over Mythic Waycrest Manor. This footage is from a +2 to kind of keep it simple. This is a really interesting dungeon. The path that you take changes almost every time you're in here, so I actually quite like it. There's a lot of different right ways to go. So let's do this. I usually start by pulling these two groups by the stairs. It kind of gives me a measure for the group, I guess. I don't know. I feel like they'll pull if you try to walk up the stairs. I've never tested it, but I just pull them. For this run, we got the top right door here, which means we're going to be facing the pig boss first. Throughout this dungeon, there are spawn points for these witch ads. A big glowy blue orb will appear like that right there, and then one of those witch ads will come out. It's usually near some pipe organs on the wall. They can't really be CC'd, no stuns. They just have to, you can interrupt them, definitely interrupt the soul volley, but you'll just have to fight them, and I usually try to pull them in addition to other packs. They're kind of strong, but they're not really like scary. So this dungeon, like I said, the path changes every time. I'll try and outline this pathway I've taken here. So I went up and to the right, you go around the balcony and then come down these stairs here. And at the bottom of these stairs, you take a right. You can get past without pulling that if everybody hugs the wall. This hallway features a couple of different enemies. There are the pigs, which don't do very much as interesting. There are pallid gorgers, which are like humans with a pig head and features. They're kind of freaky. They'll leap at people. And the worms will use an ability called Infest, where you need to stun them and interrupt them. You don't want this ability going off, or you will perpetually be creating more worms. Stun or interrupt, infest, but you can do pretty decent sized pulls in this hallway as long as your DPS can burn down the worms before they become relevant. You can see here I've got like several stacks of Infest, so there's going to be a shitload of worms for a couple of minutes here. But we'll get through it. So I'm sure you noticed a closed door we went past on the right side of this hallway here. I wish that had been open, but it wasn't, so now I've got to pull more trash in this hallway to get down to an open door. When you kill the boss that's in the room, it'll open all the doors, but to get in the room, usually only one door is open. Lo and behold, an open door. We can start clearing the room. You can see the boss there. Don't tap target recklessly. I've pulled him before, and you got to run pretty far to reset him. Also, a tedious portion of this is these doors getting right-clicked. A lot of people do that. I've had people try to like close me in the room, like we're going to fight all the trash in the room. I prefer not to do that for at least the first pull. So I get the next pull here. You'll see my healer gets a little impatient and takes it upon herself to pull some more stuff. I've seen doing that pull the boss, and I've seen it not, so I'm glad it didn't. The trash in this room essentially consists of everything you've already encountered, with the addition of banquet stewards, which cast Dinner Bell. You want to interrupt that, 100%. It silences people. It's pretty tedious for the healer if the healer eats it. Dodging the pallid gorgers in here can be a little obnoxious. They do that conal attack. It's a version of the boss's tenderize abilities. On a low key like this, it doesn't hurt me that much, but eating it may not be your best choice as a tank. Definitely not as the DPS. So onto the boss. Rahl the Gluttonous stays in his little pile of filth for the entire fight. He has an ability called Consume All, where if somebody's not in melee range with him, he's just going to start beating the crap out of your whole party. So make sure you stay in melee range. Rotten Expulsion is probably what you'll encounter next. That's where he shot all those little oozes out. Where they land, they create puddles, and when they die, they make an explosion and a little AoE. This is where you're really in danger of getting a melee DPS hit by the boss if you run out to gather them, so try to use ranged methods of attracting them to you. After that, Tenderize is probably what you'll encounter next, these 3 conal attacks that he does. It's a full third of his like 180 degree field of vision, so it can be hefty to dodge it, and the little puddles from Rotten Expulsion will slow you, so if you get stuck in one of those, you may have to eat it. And then finally, he'll use an ability called Call Servant, where servants carrying platters of food start walking towards him from the various entrances to the room. If they reach him, he'll consume them, and he'll gain 5% extra damage done. This isn't a particularly scary ability, except for on Tyrannical Week, where an extra 5% damage done out of this guy can be pretty hefty. As far as I know, the servants are susceptible to pretty much every CC. Frost Novas, had a monk paralysis them, I've rooted them, so you can keep them off the boss. With Rahl dead, we make our way out towards the courtyard, so I've had to pull almost the entire hallway out around Rahl, so percentage is really not too much of a concern at this point. There are quite a few packs out in this courtyard, and many of them feature weak enemies, like the dogs. You can just really tear through them, and then you'll be left with just the witches. So it's okay to do pretty big pulls out here, as long as your DPS holds up their end of the bargain. It's at this point in the dungeon that you're encountering Coven Thorn Shapers, and they cast a very important ability. They won't cast it here because we kill them too quickly, but Soul Fetish. If they cast this, when they die, their soul will go to one of the other enemy mobs. The mob starts with 5 stacks, and each stack is worth 10% damage and 20% haste. You can spell steal this, and you can purge it, but if you kill a mob that has it on it, it'll just go to another mob with 1 less stack. So interrupting this ability when they cast it at low health when they're about to die. You have to stop it. It's very important. Soul Fetish is #1 interrupt priority for the rest of the dungeon, basically. The next boss we'll face is the Soulbound Goliath. I like this fight. The tank has an important mechanic to do, controls the whole fight. It's kind of fun. The main driving mechanic in this fight is the boss's stacks of Soul Harvest, which for every stack they gain 5% more damage done, and they get a stack every 2 seconds during the fight. So the boss's damage is perpetually ramping up. How are you going to deal with that? Lightning will occasionally strike somewhere on the field, and if you drag the boss over the fire that's left behind by the lightning, it will catch him on fire. He kind of stumbles around dazed for a couple of seconds, and he spits out all of the stacks of soul harvest that he's collected. Unattackable souls will then start heading around and punching people in the face. Their attacks are fire damage, and you can't tank them at all, so everybody just has to avoid them. So the fight is a process of letting the boss get stacks and then dragging him over fire and making him release those stacks, and then DPS surviving all of the fire adds that come out. You can walk away from them. They move pretty slowly, but if they get to you and start punching you, that hurts. So what else does this boss do? He's got Crush, which is a purely tank mechanic, just does a big fat melee hit. So if you've got high stacks of Soul Harvest on the boss, that will hurt. Use a defensive. The boss also uses Soul Thorns, which will impale a player, stuns them, and deals damage to them over time. You have to destroy the thorns to release that player. That is essentially the entire fight, those 3 mechanics really. Don't let the boss get too high stacks, so you release a bunch of souls and take a bunch of damage in the process. Just keep dragging the boss over fire. I usually do it at about 8 or 10 stacks is my goal. So moving on, this trash pull behind the fountain, I didn't necessarily need to pull. I forgot that I pulled that entire hallway of worms and didn't really need this trash, so could have skipped this. Sometimes, depending on how your doors play out, you do need this pull for percentage, but I certainly did not need it for this particular run. Also, I could have gone the way that the healer here pulls all these trash here. Going down that hallway makes more sense because you'll be clearing the way to the basement for later in the dungeon. So having not done this dungeon very much, I wasn't really sure about the percentage. So that's just a gap in my knowledge there, but now I know. Haha. Moving on into the other side of the house. Now that first pack there was a patrol, and then the second pack by the candles, that was a stationary pack. I just pull them together. I try to kill 4 things at once. Healer wanted to do 6, so that's what we did. Spirited Defense is an ability that the shield guys will use. You want to interrupt that. It definitely slows down these pulls. You can stun this trash, so making use of big stuns is a pretty good idea here too. One of those spooky sisters also spawns in this hallway. She can't be stunned. Marking Cleave is worth trying to sidestep and dodge, but otherwise, just burn her. She'll be unCCable though. You should cross your fingers for some luck here. If you go straight down the hallway, sometimes the door on the right is open and you can fight the boss very quickly, but other times that door is not open and you will have to go up these stairs that I go up here and fight a couple of packs with these birds in them. The birds are really annoying. They lose aggro just regularly as part of their thing. You taunt them back, do what you can. One of those sisters will spawn up here, somewhere up here. Just like down below, make sure you interrupt that soul fetish. You do not want that going off. Sometimes one of those sisters will spawn right here. I don't see it happen, so that's kind of lucky. Grab this pull here, and if you feel frosty, you can get one of the packs of frogs. These packs consist of 4 or 5 frogs, which explode when you kill them, and then the 1 caster mob, which you want to interrupt, especially that drain essence. Don't let that go off. I kind of try to tank the frogs right on the lip here, and then when they all explode, you can go down the other set of steps or up onto the balcony some more, whatever you got to do. Once these packs die, it's time to fight this boss. So this Coven boss is a variation on a council fight. You are technically fighting all 3 of them at once, but really only one of them is active and requires tanking and should be the focus of your damage. Whichever one is active is the one that's holding the focusing iris. Whichever sister does have the iris, their main casted spell will do increased damage, so they should be the focus of your interrupts. And then also they're gaining energy the whole time. When they reach 100% energy, they will cast Dire Ritual, which is a burst of dark energy to all players. If you burn hard enough, you may be able to avoid this mechanic, although I would expect to get at least a couple of them going off. So first with the iris is Sister Selena. She casts Soul Bolt, interrupt that. She uses Soul Manipulation, which mind controls a member of the party. Damage that member to 50% health, I think, and it breaks the CC. She seems to be invulnerable while she's doing that, so yes. And then she also will apply an aura, which is the aura of Apathy, which reduces healing done by 50%. So she's going to make you burn a member of your party down to low health and then make it hard to heal them back up. Pretty sneaky, sis. Take her down to 50% health, and then Sister Malady will take the focusing iris from her and become the main target for you. Sister Malady casts Ruinous Bolt, identical to Soul Bolt, so interrupt it as best you can. She also has an Aura of Dread that goes on the whole party. It inflicts shadow damage every second and stacks, but you can remove it by moving. So you're dancing around, kind of like the last boss in Nexus. A little callback there. And finally, she'll use Unstable Runic Mark. So she'll cast Unstable Runic Mark on the tank, and then what that does is mark all nearby enemies with cursed runes, inflicting shadow damage every second. Upon expiration, or if it's dispelled, the rune explodes and deals additional damage to allies within 6 yards. So ideally, you get this on as few people as possible, and your healer will try to stagger the expiring of the debuff by maybe dispelling select people over time so that you don't get them all expiring at once, because that could be quite painful. And I guess this boss takes longer to explain than to kill, but that's okay, we got some time. So the last sister is Sister Briar. She casts Bramble Bolt, that's her interruptible that's empowered by holding the iris. She casts Jagged Nettles on somebody. It does a bunch of upfront physical damage, and then it leaves a ticking dot that does decent damage until they're healed above 90% of their maximum health. And then her aura is Aura of Thorns, where she wraps herself in a thorny aura, inflicting physical damage every time she is struck. So every time you get one of the sisters to 50%, the eye switches, and then you kill them all in order, and then you're off to clear your way to the final boss. Now, we went down that stairwell, which unlocks after you've killed all the bosses upstairs, and we came down here, pulling this whole group, the pack that was by the stairwell, the other pack in the corner, and this mob can be very dangerous. If she gets a stack of Soul Fetish, like, you are going to have the hardest time killing her unless you can get that off her. So be wary of doing that all at once unless your interrupts are going to be on top of that Soul Fetish. But anyway, you get down the stairs here. As long as you're at about 92% I think is really my threshold. Coming down these steps, you're good. You could even go a little bit lower because there's some trash that I always forget about. The sisters down here do a spell having to do with candles that I can't remember the name of. They create a rune that they stand in. You want to drag them out of that. Maintain interrupts as much as you can. Stuns are great down here as well. Mop up everything down here, and you've got this platform clear to face the Lord and Lady Waycrest. You'll only fight Lord Waycrest at first, so let's talk about him. Lord Waycrest only has a couple of abilities. Wasting Strike, where he deals a bunch of upfront nature damage and then leaves a dot on the player. Can't do anything about that. He also does Virulent Pathogen on a random party member, so they'll have a little circle around them and reduced movement speed. It's a dot, and then upon expiration or being dispelled, the target explodes, affecting nearby allies with Virulent Pathogen. Now, also when it's dispelled or expires, it will leave behind Contagious Remnants, which is like a green swirly effect on the ground. After 4 seconds, the remnants explode, deal nature damage to all enemies in it, and apply Virulent Pathogen again. So 2 opportunities for this ability to spread. When Lord Waycrest gets low on health, Lady Waycrest will hit him with Transfer Vitality. It heals him up at the cost of her own health, and he also starts to gain stacks of Putrid Vitality, where his haste is increased by 3% and his damage done is increased by 3%. So he gets more and more dangerous. I think she empowers him 3 or 4 times before you get to face her. So you'll think that this is a super easy boss and you just killed it, and then She fills them back up. Once Lady Waycrest is down to just 10% of her own health, she'll stop playing the piano and come on over to fight you. She uses an ability called Racking Chord. Strikes a target with unbearable pain, inflicting shadow damage. Interrupt this. Just interrupt it. She also uses Discordant Cadenza, which you just have to dodge. It creates lots of small bluish swirlies on the ground. They just keep coming out and coming out. You just got to keep running over. You can kind of run in a circle and chase yourself and not spread them too far, but don't get hit. At this point, you should finish off Lord Waycrest. He's got all those stacks of his Putrid Vitality going on. He's doing a bunch of damage. And Lady Waycrest herself doesn't create as much chaos, really, because she's not spreading virulent pathogens. So finish up Lord Waycrest and then drop Lady Waycrest and you're off. Now there's some trash that spawns in the crevasse running through the middle of this room after you kill the boss in here. You can pull all of it at once. I try to keep it up on that platform. It's a little easier to see what's going on. There's some weird like line of sight and pathing issues if you stay down in the crevasse, so I do not. But kill that stuff. They leap at people, just kind of beat them up, and then it's a super short walk to Gorak Tool, the last boss. Now Gorak Tool will cast Darken Lightning, interrupt it. Do that. Easy peasy. The main mechanic of this fight is him summoning Death Touch Slavers. Now, Death Touch Slavers are the weird plant rock creatures that are going to come at you, like the rest of this zone. Freaky shit. And they have a Dark Leap, where they leap to someone, do some damage to them. And they also have Death Lens, where they channel for 5 seconds on a player. They do like 70% of their maximum health to them in damage, and it keeps them stunned the whole time. Kill these as quickly as you can, but they don't stay dead. So when Gorak Tool reaches 100 energy, he does a torrent of shadow damage to all players, and then he also resurrects at full health any of the recently killed Death Touch Slavers. And if you have them crowd controlled instead of killing them, guess what? Those are dispelled. Gotcha. But there is a little bit of a trump card we can play here. One of the humans, Inquisitor Yorick, is throwing these vials of alchemical fire down onto the field. You pick one of those up, and you throw it on a Death Touch Slaver when you've just killed it, and its body will disappear, it'll incinerate it, and then it can't be resurrected by Gorak Tool. You should get 1 vial per summon of Death Touch Slaver, so you always have one if you need it. The timing does get a little sketchy at the end. You might be better off like waiting for 2 of them to die and then burning them both. I've seen the timing get offset, but yeah, kill Death Touch Slavers, use the alchemical fire to destroy their body, and then you will not get overwhelmed. And this fight is honestly a little bit easier than I thought it would be. But it's a pretty fun fight, and looking for the fire can be kind of a tense moment. So that's it. This is only a +2 in here, so everything died a little quicker than I could even explain the boss fights. That's kind of funny. But yeah, let me know if you think I missed anything. I think this dungeon emphasized for me almost as more than any of the other dungeons I've done so far that interrupting is essential, and you can tell when a group is bad and doesn't interrupt in here for sure. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments, and as always, I'm still myself, Alberta26. Game on.